The car industry has coughed up some of the worst vehicles and the biggest pile of crap. The first pile is this vehicle right here. We have the Ford Mustang Mach-E. This one's the GT edition. Now, I don't know where Ford came up and what the theory was other than the transformation to selling electric vehicles, but nobody wanted these vehicles. And the only way Ford could sell these vehicles was to incentivize the crap out of them. The reliability was marginal, to say the least. There was electrical problems, sunroof shattering, and just a whole host of challenges to get these vehicles sold. I saw vehicles that were brand new that hadn't sold for 3 years. They were still piling up on lots. They still couldn't sell brand new old stock that were 3 years old. And the worst part is Ford even themselves say they're losing tens of thousands of dollars on the production of each one of these vehicles. Now, many people say, well, I like these vehicles and I like to have a nice option. Not everybody wants to drive a Tesla Model Y. Maybe some people are looking for something a little different. Let's take a look. Here you have this great unique front grille, has the little horsey on the front. They do have a interesting style of headlights and all kinds of black plastic, and I will say that piano finishing looks wonderful. They have these beautiful alloys with a red caliper tucked in behind there. Beautiful plug-in port. This is the Mustang Mach-E. Of course, the GT gives you a little extra boost. You get these little door handles. That's cute. And the interior looks not so Spartan like a Tesla. And certainly for those that really needed to get into the electric space, some people were looking for that option. But here, how could they possibly do this to that badge, the Mustang Mach-E, and they go and use the Mustang taillights to make matters worse? Enthusiasts put the Mustang up on a pedestal. It's a legendary vehicle. It's the American car. And then they go and stick the Mustang brand name on an electric vehicle, which is so contrary to a muscle car. This was strictly a wrong marketing scheme. And this isn't the first time Ford's been doing this. I talked in one of my other videos how they utilize the Maverick, that new truck that they talk about. The new Ford Maverick is one of those vehicles that uses a name from a car that was back in the 70s. We personally had one. And then they go and stick a Maverick badge on their pickup truck, just for a little bit of clout, perhaps. But here we have the Mustang Mach-E in all of its glory. And the worst part is, with Ford losing money, people are pushed into a corner, feel that they have to buy these vehicles. Then, of course, Ford's not selling them. What's wrong with this picture? Nobody wants it. And this vehicle only has a face that a mother can love.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
And here's another vehicle that I find a true joke in my own personal opinion, simply because of the level of the catastrophic failures you're finding from the brands of Hyundai as well as its sister company Kia. They created one of the worst engines in automotive history, which is the Theta 2 engine. They've had a ton of issues. Back in 2015, they came out with a recall. 2011 to 2012 Hyundai Sonatas was the beginning of the end for the brand. That time, they had catastrophic engine failures. It seemed kind of peculiar when a lot of people were taking their vehicles back to the dealership with rod knocks, catastrophic engine failures, and just a whole host of problems. Strangeness, oil burning, check engine lights. So in 2015, that first wave of recalls came out. Then in 2020, they opened the books again and said, wait a minute, there's way more issues. We're over into the 7 figures now in terms of numbers of catastrophic engine failures. Now there's a recall, and of course, allegedly a class action lawsuit because of the numbers of vehicles that had catastrophic failures. Now, there was also a whistleblower involved that said, you know what, allegedly that they were sitting on their laurels, knew that there were some challenges that they were aware of, but chose to sit on them anyway. A lot of those engines were very problematic. The 2-liter, the 2.4-liter Theta 2 engine that you're finding a lot of these vehicles. This one here specifically is a Sport 2.0 turbo all-wheel drive Santa Fe Limited. Now, a lot of people love these vehicles because they looked something a little different, a little sportier. A lot of people driving Hondas and Toyotas were looking for something a little more interesting, and they were targeting that market. Clearly, they had it right in terms of the overall looks, the style, the design, the packaging, and the value proposition seemed to be there until you owned one for a period of time. And then they had to ultimately extend the warranty on the engines because the engines would not last and nobody wanted to buy these vehicles. Lawsuits, backlog and orders of new engines. Initially, they were talking about having to just get parts and pieces and piecemeal and rebuild it. Then it got so bad they were ordering up full engines and dropping them in. Unfortunately, they couldn't get engines quick enough, and there was a big major backlog. Other than the fact that there was a lot of transmission issues with some of these vehicles, later models also had issues with piston rings that would score the cylinders, create excessive oil consumption, on top of the ABS controller that would potentially leak fluid into the electronics and then cause a potential fire. But the big issue had nothing to do with that. Those were all the nickel and dime problems. Stalling, oil consumption, strange noises, drivability issues. The big issue was that engine. And a big part of the problem, allegedly during the machining process of the new engines, you wound up with metal particulate in the engine, and it wasn't allegedly thoroughly flushed. And so that metal particulate rolled around in there, and once the oil was put into service and the engines were run, it quite often took years. A lot of times that metal particulate landed into the bearings, overheat the bearings, and then the bearings wind up catastrophically failing. Sometimes it started with a weird rod knock. Sometimes you get a check engine light. Of course, premature oil consumption, and there's a whole plethora of issues symptomatic related to that engine and bad bearings. And one thing that ultimately was many vehicles burning literally by the roadside. I have many stories, and I've got examples of where I've seen these vehicles actually have burnt as a result of that bad engine. But sadly, many vehicles were impacted by this recall. The 2013 to 2019 Santa Fe, like what we're looking at here, as well as the Sonata, the 2011 to 2019, and the Tucson, another smaller SUV, the 2014, 2015, and the 2019 were all impacted, as well as the Kia vehicles. The Optima, Sorento, Sportage were also impacted by this problematic engine. So unfortunately, any vehicle with the Theta 2 engine, it was a huge risk. I personally know somebody that ended up with their engine catastrophically failing, and the worst part is the warranty. Allegedly, if you didn't follow the criteria for care, it could result in the warranty not entirely covering your engine. If you had too many miles as well, it wouldn't necessarily cover that engine warranty either, and it could be a big problem. If you're liking the video so far, you're gonna love the rest of the channel. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and don't forget the notifications bell so you know when the next amazing videos come. Another one that has to make the list, just because it's such a monumental number, and we're talking about General Motors, GM, as well as Chevy vehicles with the full-size V8 engines, 6.2 liter, called the L87. I've had a lot of General Motors vehicles over the years. I loved their trucks way back in the 70s, the 80s, and even some in the 90s. I've definitely loved the brand. We've had the brand in our family. So it kind of hurts me to actually say this. Unfortunately, General Motors is going through some tough times right now with this new motor, this new engine, a 6.2 liter V8 that you're finding in some of these models from the Cadillacs, GMC, Chevy pickup trucks that are sporting that V8 engine. Now, one of the major factors, of course, why this is such a great engine and why it's so heartbreaking to see this happening is because it's one of the last naturally aspirated V8 engines available in a full-size truck. What's Ram got? Now they've got their Hurricane twin turbo straight six. Also, you have in the Fords, they have the EcoBoost, the V6 engines there. So General Motors and Chevy are the only brands right now that still sport that V8 engine. Now they have had transmission problems. They have had, unfortunately, lifter issues in both the 5.3s as well as the 6.2 liter engines. So that has been an ongoing issue. The latest news from some insiders are alluding to the fact that apparently there's an issue with these crankshafts not being in tolerance, outside of tolerance. And of course, with these engines, now these modern day engines, General Motors, they produce a lot of power, they rev high, they're essentially a high performance engine, and the tolerance has to be bang on. The tolerance is out, the bearings don't match up properly, next thing you know, you have an engine just piling up. It is a sad joke of sorts. What does that mean for the organization? Unfortunately, a lot of the people that work in these companies, you know, whether it's the service writers, whether it's the people that are building these, the mechanics, the people at the local dealerships, they have no part to do with this. It's sad because they're probably going to hear a lot of flack about this. A car gets towed in, or one of their customers' truck gets towed in, and they're probably going to be the first ones to hear about these catastrophic failures. It's sad, it's unfortunate, because they have nothing to do with it. And most people that I speak to that work for the brand, mechanics, they feel good about the brand, they like it. And I've said this for a while, the only one with a V8 definitely is a vehicle that I would consider buying again. But we're seeing way too many issues. So it's a sad state of affairs with these massive recalls, the dollars involved in that. I mean, who knows what level of repairs they're talking about. Even if they have to throw a complete new long block in there, maybe $10,000 per unit installed parts and labor. $10,000 times 800,000 recalls or units. I can't even imagine what that ends up costing General Motors. Here's the next one that's a little bit of a joke to me. I don't know how they came about it. Now you have a Land Cruiser, and you look historically, and I've been around a long time, and I've seen a lot of Land Cruisers, diesels, and the last generations being V8. We expected the Land Cruiser to be the top pop, the big daddy, the kingpin, of course, for Toyota SUVs, and yet this version here is a smaller SUV and competes directly with the likes of the Toyota 4Runner, except the 4Runner is better in many ways. See, this vehicle here does not not give you the third row. This vehicle here does not give you a V8. This vehicle here gives you a 2.4 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine, made it up to a couple of electric motors to produce about 326 horsepower. But again, it lacks that luster that you had, that magic with some of the V8s and the reliability that you got with the older outgoing V8 engines. Sadly, you have a vehicle now that feels like it's competing with itself with the 4Runner. Now, you do have a great set of updates and details, and I want to explain personally what I would buy instead of this if you like the brand. But let's take a quick look around. We get the big, beautiful wheels on here. Look, I love that black plastic detailing on here. There's definitely some nice detail. I love the looks of it, and I think from a styling perspective, they definitely got it right with this vehicle. If you look around, Toyota, they definitely nailed it. It's a good looking vehicle. You know it's going to be somewhat reliable. It does feature that 8-speed automatic transmission, and of course that 2.4, so it sounds an awful lot like the Tacoma, doesn't it? And we know the Tacoma had some problems with that 8-speed auto, so time will tell on this one too. They have all of the detailing on it to make it look very utilitarian. I love the styling of it. Lots of plastic on here, but that's going to be rugged. Here's the iForce Max by Toyota Land Cruiser. There we go. You've got to like the looks of this vehicle. They've missed the boat in my personal opinion, because you could just get yourself a Toyota 4Runner, which clearly is the same thing with a 2.4 liter turbo 4. It's more or less the same vehicle, and it's a little bit less money. Or even a better choice to go than this vehicle, I would probably go directly to Lexus and get their twin turbo V6 3.4 liter engine in the GX 550, because that also gives you not just more power, performance, more conventional drivetrain, but it also gives you an optional third row, which is an absolute super practical way to go if you need that space. The GX 550 looks slightly chiseled up. It looks slightly more aggressive. It certainly looks more upscale. And if you go with a lower trim level on the GX 550 versus a high trim level on this vehicle, the Land Cruiser, you're pretty much a no-brainer. This just sort of washes itself of value. So while the expected reliability is likely going to be there, it's going to do everything you ask it to do, but it's just lost its magic in my own personal opinion. They're putting in these base engines, these 2.4s in just about everything these days. Not to mention, we know that Toyota's already got plans in the next couple of years, and that's probably why they're doing it. What they're doing is because they're going pure hybrid. Every vehicle within a couple of years time from now are likely going to be hybrid drivetrains, so they're probably not going to put a hybrid V6, so naturally that's how they came across this particular drivetrain. Same as the Tacoma, it has enough giddy up and go, but it just seems to have lost its magic. Kind of a joke if you ask me. With all of that said, right there's another list of some of the crappy vehicles I literally can't believe that made it to the market. Hope to see each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.